Imagine a time when fear may be standing behind every door and just a whisper can ruin your life. It is 1496 and Spain is overcome with the Inquisition organization already crystallized into a tool for merciless zeal in matters of religious purity. For most, the mere accusation of heresy would do to change one's fortunes, and for those who were unlucky enough to fall in its grasp, one of the most terrible methods of torture awaited them, the Strappado. What you are going to hear is not only a tale of pain, but how power, fear, and control can push the boundaries of human endurance. Strappado was a method that did not feed on visible trauma, but was silent torture inflicted on the body of a human being. The victims were hoisted up by the wrists, which were tied behind their backs, were just left to dangle in midair. Every passing second tugged them down with their own weight, wrenching their arms and shoulders in a manner that defied description. As from the outside, the body seemed whole. Inside, the joints tore under the strain. But why this method? Because, for the torturers, it seemed clean. There were no cuts, no visible scars, just silence in the face of suffering. And the silence, they believed, would eventually break. This brutal method was used as a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. The Inquisition sought not just to punish heresy, but to make an example of those who stood in their way. One such man was Juan de la Cruz, who had no other guilt than that of having been born into a family of converted Jews, also known as conversos. In being targeted by suspicion, his life was flipped inside out, like many other lives. He lived a life with peace and devotion to his faith, that had little say in the midst of paranoia. An accusation was easily had from envy, rivalry, or even a simple misunderstanding. And once the Inquisition had a person in its clutches, few escaped without scars. The accusation against Juan was secretly practicing Judaism, based on nothing more than whispers. He denied it. Again and again he pleaded his innocence. But to the Inquisitors, his denials were all the more reason to doubt him. So to the Strappado they turned. The torture started slow. He was being lifted off the ground, arms straining, body being pulled tighter. His muscles screamed, but still he held firm. But as the hours turned to pain, his world compressed into that one moment of agony. And finally, he submitted, as so many before him had done, not guilty. But the pain was all that was offered. He confessed to crimes he never committed, and that false confession was all they needed. Juan's story is not about one man. It's a window into a world of fear and unbridled power. The Strappado was the symbol of that power, a method not only contrived to break bodies, but crush spirits. To the Inquisition, it was a means of control to make sure that no one dared challenge their authority. To those who endured it, like Juan, it daunted them much deeper than any scar, a mark of fear, of helplessness, a world where justice had been distorted into cruelness. Centuries have passed, yet the teachings derived from that gloomy period in history remain in memory. The Strappado and the Inquisition's use of it served and serve as examples of how dangerous unchecked power can be and what the price is that humanity pays for fanaticism. Whole communities felt the psychological impact associated with living in fear each day, knowing that anyone could be accused, tortured, and broken, and would wear those scars well into further generations. What, then, is to be learned from this? History is more than a date or a fact. It is a story. Our story of triumphs, but also of defeats. The Strappado was a lesson on the risk of allowing fear and cruelty to dominate, but, at the same time, a story of the resilience of the human spirit. Even under unbelievable torture, individuals like Juan fought for one's dignity when all the odds were totally against them. As we reflect upon this period, let us not forget that our dedication to justice, compassion, and human rights shall remain unshaken. Cruelty condoned by righteousness always leaves its scars at both an individual level and the societal levels of life. It depends upon us that we learn from these lessons and never let any day of mankind travel back to the dark era. So, if you think that compassion and justice should always outshine fear and oppression, smack that like button, subscribe, and join us for more lessons from the past. Together, we can make sure that history is never forgotten and that its lessons build a better future.